Okay, let's see. So I was really surprised to see that a lot of you actually struggled with storing the data inside array, inside your state. So what I've sent you is an array of states. Yeah, so I intentionally didn't say what you need to do with this array. So I just wanted to see how you guys will, whether you're going to store it in an array or do something else. So some of you stored it in a variable, something like equals to, and then you pasted this array of states over here, which is, I mean, it would work, but if you want, so the data that your component depends on should be stored inside the state. That's why, I mean, that's what the state is there for, right? So whenever you see some kind of data that your state depends on, that your component depends on, you want to store it inside the state. Another very common mistake was that you guys just basically did this. Yeah, so you just basically pasted an array inside your state, or you some of you did this. This the state equals to an array, like so. So your state was basically an array of objects. Yeah. So this is not the best approach. So what you need to do, So state is an object, first of all. State is an object, and it should always stay as an object. If you want to store something inside your state, so think of it as just a regular object, okay? So for example, if this was okay. If this was just a regular object, so how would you store an array inside this object?
We need key.
You would need a key, right? Yes. So some kind of key, and then a value here is an array, right? So if you wanted to store your array of states, hold on. There. So if you wanted to store this array of states, that's what you would do. You would create a key, some kind of key, for example, data key, and then you would store everything under that key, or you would say, for example, states. Yeah. So you would store everything under the states key. Okay, because normally if this was just a regular object, I don't think you would do this. Yeah, I don't think you would make this mistake. So whenever you think of a state, think of just a regular object, which basically it is an object. So you would need to create states key and then store everything here. Okay. Another thing that you guys struggled with is, okay, so you have a states array, it's huge, right? So whenever you want to, write something here and go back and check something from the state and then go back here. So you guys were like scrolling back and forth, and this was a huge inconvenience. So what you can do in VS Code is you can hide, for example, So you can hide like individual object or the whole array like so. So you don't have to keep scrolling back and forth vertically. That's very uncomfortable. You have the same thing in Code Sandbox. So make sure whenever you have like large chunks of code or large chunks of data, just hide it like so. And then whenever you need to have a look at it, you can just expand it and then collapse it. Okay. What else? So some of you struggled with rendering the states in the UI. So what I said is you need to show each state. So basically, each state object inside a list item, right? And you need to show the name of the state, abbreviation, and the capital. So those three things. So what you needed to do is two things. You could either create a UL here, and inside UL, you would open curly braces. So whenever I open curly braces inside my return statement, what does it mean? What does it mean for React?
It's a JavaScript.
Exactly. So whenever I open curly braces, it means that I'm about to inject some JavaScript code inside my return statement. Okay. So then I would need to do, this.state.states, let's say data. This is confusing. So this is an array, right? So in order to show it on my UI, I can either loop through the array or use one of the higher order functions. So some groups struggled with choosing which higher order function you should use. Some of you suggested filter, but filter is only used whenever you're trying to filter the data. So for example, if I said, out of this states array, please only show me the ones that start with A. Or please show me the ones that whose name is longer than, I don't know, 5 letters. Yeah. So if you had this task, then of course you would go for filter. But because the task was to display all of the states inside the list item, so each state inside the list item. So it's either for each or map, right? But whenever you're just trying to display something on the UI, it's only map. Why? Because for each is a function that you use in order to mutate the original data, the original array, okay? But that's not what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is we're trying to display each state inside a list item, right? So we're not supposed to mutate the states array. We're not supposed to mutate the state even, yeah? So that wasn't the task. So usually in React, 90% of cases, when you're thinking, oh, should I use for each or should I use map? It's usually map, because in React, a lot of tasks just involve, displaying something on the UI, right? So just think, whenever you're thinking like, should I choose for each or map? So you should ask yourself, do I need to mutate the array that I'm using? So in this case, you don't need to, right? So that's why it's map. Okay. Okay, let's hide this one. Oops, not this one, that one. So this.state.data is my states array. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, map it. Right. So what does map expect as a parameter?
Element.
Element index array.
No.
Function,
Callback.
callback function.
Callback function, right?
Yeah.
So please
inside
don't
callback function.
confuse the parameters of higher order method with parameters of a callback inside higher order method. Yeah. So higher order functions or higher order methods, they are called this way because they take another function as a parameter, right? So map is expecting a callback, right? So whatever I put in here is the parameters for the callback. So what does callback expect from me in this case?
Data.
Element.
I mean, element. Yeah, element.
So element here is what?
This will be the city. I mean data.
So what is each element inside data
Object.
array? But what does it represent? A state, right? It's just every object is a state here. So what we can say is we can say state. So what am I supposed to return?
We.
A list item, right? Inside which I'm going to have, let's actually separate it. So I'm gonna need, say, state name. Is it name?
Yeah, it's name.
Okay. And let's say an H4 with state dot capital, right? And then let's say just a P with state dot ebbr, I believe. Okay.
Aselia,
So,
I have a question.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that state, which is our like store for information, and this state name of the states, is it okay to use the same
Yeah,
for those?
sure. I mean, it's not going to intervene with each other because this one is inside a
Map.
callback inside the map, right? So it's not going to interfere with this state. But if this is confusing, yeah, is it confusing?
Yeah,
should we
that's why
just
I
call
was
it-
like a little.
What should I say? Do you guys want to call it element or object or something like that?
Element.
Element. Okay, yeah, let's make it element. I didn't realize that it's the same name.
Yeah, and another question, I know it might be a stupid question, but here we are
No.
saying element dot name, and we're gonna still reach that keys inside the objects, right? We don't need that element dot state.
Okay, so because I'm mapping through the states array, so
Oh, so you
here-
already once reached that one and then inside. Okay, I got it.
So here it's already, at this point, it's an array, right?
Mhm.
Once I map it, inside my callback, basically because map in the nutshell is a for loop, right? So
Yeah.
because I'm mapping through this array, so I'm able to reach, so it's the same as if you would have a for loop on this array. So array I inside your for loop would be an item or element, right? So the same way, following the same logic, every element inside the callback is already this object here,
Yeah, I got it now.
right?
Thanks.
Okay, that's why I'm doing element dot name, element dot capital, and so on and so forth. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Cool. Okay, so let's see if. Okay. Oh. This that state that data was the data. There we go. And One other thing that I want to do is I noticed that you guys are not destructuring. So destructuring is a huge part of React. For now, you don't feel the benefit of it because the applications that we're working on are really tiny. But while we are working on tiny applications, it's a really good chance for you to practice destructuring without having, thousands of lines of code in front of you, right? So please always destructure whenever you can. So do you guys see where we can destructure here?
Should we destructure?
We can do this element capital that this.
In here?
Mhm.
So let's destructure. So every element is what kind of data type? Data structure.
Is object.
It's an object, right? So I can destructure object like so. So what kind of properties do I need from object?
Name, capital AB.
Capital and abbreviation.
Cool. So now that I destructured them in here, I don't have to show that those are these elements properties, right? I'm just showing them directly because I destructured them, okay? How about this one, this dot state? Let's destructure that one as well. How can I get the data array out of state?
It's same const equal to object, and then
Object.
is it array or object? Data is an array, right?
So I'm destructuring this dot state, which is an object, right?
Okay.
So
Inside will
data.
be data.
Cool. So here, instead of doing this dot state, I can just say data. Okay, so that is one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to have a separate sort of variable. So for example, what that would be? Content. So that content can be equal to this whole thing. Right? So what you're doing is you're just basically taking this code out of the return statement. So your return statement can stay kind of simple and short. Yeah. So then you can just show the content in here. Right? And it would be the same. Is this part clear, guys? What I'm doing here?
No.
Yeah, it's same as
yes, it is.
reassigning, right? In JavaScript, when we do console.log and output.
Okay, so let's clarify this part. So basically, what I'm trying to do here is I had this whole mapping thing in here, inside curly braces, right? Like so. So that's what it was initially. Then what I did, so that's how it was in the beginning. So what I did is when I look at this return statement, it looks a little messy, yeah, because I'm mapping through the data array and I have another return statement here. So it looks like a lot of code inside the return statement. So how can I optimize it? How can I make it more readable? Okay, so one way to do it would be to create a variable, let's say content, yeah, and assign this whole result that I'm getting here. So mapping through the data array, and then returning list items, what I'm doing here is I'm just assigning everything, the whole result of the mapping, I'm assigning it to the content variable. And instead of having the whole function inside my return statement here, I'm just making my return statement shorter and like more readable. So that's why I'm displaying the content variable instead of having the whole function here in the return statement. Okay, so if I console log content variable, what am I going to see? What do you guys think?
List items.
List of name,
Mhm.
capital, and abbreviations.
So I'm gonna have about 50 list items, yeah, with name, capital, and abbreviation. So let's open the console. You see? So I'm logging the what's the word? The content variable, okay? And it returns an array of basically, you see its React element type list, and then etc. etc. So basically, it's returning me 50 list items with whatever data I put inside of it. Okay, so that's why this thing is working here. So that's why when I'm assigning it to the content variable and I'm showing it inside the UL here. So basically it's just inserting this array of list items inside my unordered list. And that's why I'm able to display it in the same way as if this whole thing, mapping thing, was inside a UL. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm really glad that I was able to visit you guys in groups and see what kind of errors you're making. I think it's very important to reflect on some of the most common ones. So hopefully you guys won't repeat those errors again, especially these kind of things. Yeah. So please keep in mind that a state is just an object. Okay. So object needs to have a key and value, right? So in here, whatever data you want to insert inside your state, don't forget that for every data, you need a key. Okay, so, okay, I think that's it from my side. So the next task would be to, oh, by the way, did everyone finish this task? Because some of you were still kind of solving it.
We finished.
So did anyone not finish the task?
Yes, we.
You guys, okay. Ella, what was your problem there?
The logic.
Okay. Yeah, that's the tricky part.
Yeah. Can we separate on the component this one? Just want to see how to do it.
Can we separate with what?
For component.
Can we create
Yeah, that will be the next task for you guys. So yes, I'm reading your mind. So the next task would be to create a separate component. Okay, so it can be like a state component, or I don't know, however you want to name it, or list item component. Yeah, let's name it list item. And I want you to basically render this component, list item component, inside your app.js. Okay, so I want you to call it here. I don't want to give any more details because I want to see how you guys will be implementing it on your own. So for now, the only information that I'm giving you is please create a separate list item component and call it inside your app.js component. Okay. So let me open the breakout. Let me stop recording. Recording right away. Okay. Some of you guys handled this solution really well, and I was very excited to see your solutions. So some groups took a different approach, which is fine. So let's just have a look at first at what I wanted to see, and second, the way you guys solved, and whether it's better practice or not. So we can discuss it together. All right, so what I wanted to see is I wanted you to create a list item component. So I specifically made it not plural, but singular, not list items, but just list item. So I wanted to see you guys to create a component here that would return literally a list item, right? Okay. Oops. Put it here. Okay, cool. Let me hide this data. Okay, so the task was to create a list item component and to call it inside app.js. Yeah, so I specifically didn't give you any more like detailed instructions because I wanted to see the approach that you will take while solving this solution. What would your list item component represent? Yeah, or what kind of data you will pass to list item component as props. So I just wanted to see how you guys will solve this on your own. So I see that some of you have problems with the return statement here. So every React component, without any exception, should return some kind of HTML element, okay? Whether it's a div or list item or React fragment, like we covered the other day. So it must be some kind of HTML element. Inside that HTML element, you can insert any kind of JavaScript code, as you see fit. But all of that should be wrapped at the end of the day, it should be wrapped with some kind of HTML element, okay? So some of you tried to do something like this, and then you did like, for example, data.map and so on. So that is immediately going to throw you an error because right now your return statement is some kind of JavaScript code, yeah? That's not what React element is expecting from you. So React element is React component. So React component is expecting to see some kind of HTML element wrapping the whole return statement. And then after that, you can insert whatever JavaScript code you need, but it has to be wrapped inside the element, okay? So that was one of the common mistakes. Let's see. Another one. Let me call it first. So let's say okay. So what I wanted to see is for you guys to call this list item component in the place where we are in fact creating list items, right? Because list item component is returning an li. So where are you creating those li's? In here, right? So list item. Okay. Let's see. Right now, I'm getting my list items over here, but they're empty. Why? Because the list item that I'm returning here is empty, right? There is no data in it. So how do I fill it with data, and what kind of data I need to pass inside my list item? So when you ask yourself that question, you need to think, first of all, what I was displaying before, what kind of data I was displaying earlier inside my list item. It was name of the state, it was a capital and abbreviation, right? So this is exactly what you need to pass. The same thing, because this list item is just an li. So basically this is what you're returning. Therefore, the content of the list item should be the same as it was before. Is it clear? Okay.
Yes, it's clear.
Okay. So another common mistake that I noticed that you guys make is the way you're passing props. So let's go back to our example. Where is that thing?
It seems you didn't have key. What do you have?
Oh, because I was showing you guys, right? Okay, so let's get rid of all of that. So let's say props. Props is a JavaScript object that you use in order to pass data from one component to another component. Okay, so whenever inside your code, inside the list item, whenever you say, I'm passing props to this list item component. So this is when you create this props object. Okay, so now that, okay, so behind the scenes, this object is being created. So let's console log props. You see, what is this? What is it?
Empty
Objects.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so why I'm receiving so many of them?
It's mapping. Oh.
Mm-hmm. So every list item component is console logging the props object. How many times am I calling this list item component?
As many as it's inside our array.
Exactly. So that would be around 50, right? So I have right now, I'm calling my list item component 50 times. All right. So that's why I'm getting 50 empty props objects. Okay. So whenever you say to your component that, okay, I'm passing props in here. So that means that you are creating this props object. Okay. And for now, it's an empty object. So let's say you want the data that you want to pass is, for now, let's say just name equals to data, right? So this is how you pass data to your props object. So whenever you do this, yeah, in fact, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, now inside my props object, I'm gonna have a name key, and the value of that key will be Aselia. Okay, so whenever you're doing this, this is what you're doing. Okay. So when you need to reach to this value, so let's say you're having a list item that you need to return inside your list item component, and you're passing JavaScript in it. So if I need to show Aselia inside my list item, how do I reach to it?
Props that.
Props that name,
Name.
right? So later, if I decide to pass, for example, abbreviation equals to and what was the other one? Capital equals to I don't know. Okay, so whenever I do this, I'm actually doing this. So I'm creating more key and value pairs, right? So I'm creating ABBR, and the value of it is AL, and I'm creating capital key, and the value of that capital key is Chicago. Okay, so this is what's happening behind the scenes. So if I need to display a paragraph with Chicago, how do I reach to it?
Props that. Capital.
Capital, right? Okay. So if I want to reach to, let's say, the abbreviation inside the paragraph, and I say, oops, that abbreviation, am I going to get anything?
No.
No, because my props object doesn't have abbreviation key, right? So whenever I'm trying to display some kind of data from props, I need to check, do I even have this key? So right now my props object has name key, ABBR key, and capital key. So those are the only keys that I can display inside my props object. For others, it will not return anything because there's nothing there. Okay, is it clear?
Yeah.
Cool. Do you guys want me to send this piece of code as a memo, or is it okay?
Yeah, that will be great to have.
Okay.
Aselia, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not related to this props, but if we go back to our app.js.
Okay, 1 second then.
Mhm.
Let me just, oops. Let me just edit it quickly. Oh, 1 second. Okay. Okay, I'm here. So
Yeah.
in Node.js.
So I know you already said that 1,000,000 times, but one more time. So we were passing everything. So you did inside the render, right? So line 3, 6, 7, and like all this data.
Yep.
Yeah, but why we are passing it inside the render? Because it's supposed to be updated, or how we can, like, if we pass it outside of render, what's the error here? I mean,
there is no error. So first of all, we're not passing it anywhere. We are creating it inside the
Yeah,
render
yeah.
method,
I mean,
right?
we already, we did that mistake. We created outside the render. And
I think you guys
um,
created a function, right?
yeah, after that, we deleted the function and we did this thing outside the render. And I was just, can you read this code again? Why we should create it inside the render?
So the thing is, whenever you want to create a variable and show it on the UI, so you need to create it inside render, because this space between constructor and render, this space over here, is there in order to, so you can create functions, methods.
Yeah, because
Okay.
this is an object, right? So inside of
Yeah.
object, we cannot declare something. Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
why.
it's a subclass, right? Subclass. So it is, this space over here is only available for methods or functions.
Oh, you
whenever
mean
you need
because
to-
the class, it's an object and inside?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's a subclass, right? So whenever we are creating a class component, we are creating a subclass of React component, right?
Mhm.
So if you guys remember, whatever variables we want to have, we either store them inside our state. Yeah, like for example, data variable. We are storing it inside the state. But this variable over here, it will throw an error immediately.
Okay, so that space is just for the functions and for the methods, right?
So whatever functions you create, they become methods of this app subclass, right?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Sure. So it's good to, ask those questions, because I think this part is, clear, but when you ask like deeper, it's good to clarify those kind of things, so you don't make similar mistakes again, right? Okay, so is this part clear, guys, how we are passing the data to props?
Yes.
Cool. So now I want to pass whatever data I need to display inside my list item. Now I want to pass it here. So I'm passing name as name, and capital as capital. Okay. So now if I console log props, what am I going to see?
Fulfill state, capital, and abbreviation.
So if we go back to the UI. So I'm going to see 50 objects with different properties, but similar keys, right? Name, capital, and abbreviation. So those are the keys that I created, but the values under those keys, they are dynamic. Where are they coming from?
Data.
The data array, right? And because I'm mapping through that array, basically looping through this array, so the values here, they are dynamic, because on each loop, we are looping through every state object. That's why the values here are different for every component call, right? And we're calling this component around 50 times. All right, now let's show it here. So what we were doing was at H1. With props that name, and then each with props that props that capital, right? And then let's say a paragraph with in PPR home. So do I have to wrap this return statement in parentheses?
I think if
Yes.
it's saying it doesn't show any error, I think it
Yeah, as long
works.
as it has opening and same opening and closing tag. It's okay.
Mhm.
If it's in the one line, we don't need it, right?
Mhm. So basically what's happening here is a return statement is looking for something on the same line. So if it finds either parentheses or a wrapping element, yeah, so it will know, okay, so there's an opening tag here. So there should be somewhere a closing tag. So whatever in between this opening and closing tag, I should return. Okay, so you can either do this, but I prefer to wrap everything in parentheses and just, I think it just gives my return statement like more structure. So I prefer to do it in this way. Okay. Okay. So is it clear, guys, what we were trying to do here?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you guys have any questions?
I have a question in our code, in our component. We use this dot props. In your code, you're using just props.
So you only use this when you're dealing with a class component.
I see. Okay, got it. So what is better to create inside our component? Which one is class component or function?
So when you're deciding between functional component and class component, you should always choose functional component because they're faster, unless you need your component to store some kind of data inside. So in that case, you will need a class component. Okay. So it's like
I see.
when you're going hiking. So let's say you have a very light, comfortable bag, and you have a really huge, chunky, and heavy bag. So which one are you going to choose? Of course, you want to take the light and comfortable one, right? Unless you have to carry like lots of food and I don't know, the sleeping mattress and whatever else. So unless you have to carry all of those, so in that case, you wouldn't go for like a large, chunky, heavy bag, right? But if you don't have to carry anything, if it's just a small hiking trip for a couple of hours, then you want to go with light bag, easy one, comfortable one, right? So the same logic applies here. So if you need to, if your component needs to carry some kind of data inside its state, then you should go for a class component. But if your component is fine with just using props data, then you should go for a functional component. Okay, any
So
questions?
the function component doesn't have state, right?
Of course, functional components cannot have a, well, in at this point, functional components cannot have states. But as we move on further into React hooks, you will see that we will be able to store state there.
Okay.
but it's a whole different story. For now, the difference between class components and functional components is that functional components are lighter and faster. And class components and the functional components cannot store state. Class components, on the other hand, they can store state, but the disadvantage is that they are, to render a class component, it takes a lot more time. Yeah, so if you have, for example, an application with like thousands of different components, of course, you don't want all of them to be class components. It wouldn't make sense, right? So you want some of them to be functional, some of them to be class components. So just whenever you create a class component just out of necessity, okay? But you want to go with functional components every time that you can. Was it clear? Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about this implementation?
I have a questions, like, for example, when you just type list item, and then when you console log the props, it displays like 50 objects, right? Empty objects. And how they know that they should display the 50 objects, which is we didn't yet pass the data from this state.
That's a good question. So if I don't have any data here, and let's say I don't have any data here, so I only have props. Yeah. Let's go back to our tuple here. Let's say I have a function that's called list item. And it returns an object. So it creates an object, and it returns that object. Okay. So in the nutshell, this is what's happening, right?
Yeah.
So this object is props object, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you call this function 50 times, how many props objects are you going to have in the end?
If you call 50 times, you're gonna have a 50.
50 objects, right?
Yes.
50 props objects, which are empty.
Mm-hmm.
So this is exactly how React knows that it has to create 50 props objects, because we have created the list item component and we're calling it 50 times because we're calling it inside the loop.
Which loop?
The
Oh,
map.
oh yeah, we already passed their data. Okay, I see.
So we are looping through our state data, which has 50 different objects in it. And we're mapping through that. And for every element inside our map, we are returning this list item component.
Okay, yeah, now I can see that. Yeah, I was thinking like how they know the 50 times can, you know.
So it's the same as if I had a for loop. And and every time I would call this list item function. So the same thing is happening in here, but on a bit like higher level. Yeah. So we created this list item component, which is a function in the nutshell. We are looping through our data array, and for every element inside our data array, we are calling this list item component, right? So the same thing, That's why it's returning us 50 different props objects that are empty.
Okay, yeah, now I understand that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other questions concerning this, guys? Okay, cool. Oh, I'm so sorry. You guys didn't have a break today, right? How about I give you one last task and we'll finish 10 minutes earlier, okay? So whenever I forget about the break, just remind me because I get carried away and forget things.
Okay. Yeah, but we're not gonna have a break to figure out this task. It's gonna take another 30 minutes.
Okay, so my last task is, so it's a two-part task, but maybe we can at least do the first part and then we can do the second part in the extra class tomorrow, right? That's tomorrow. Today's Wednesday, right? Okay, yeah, that's tomorrow. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to create an input component. Okay, so let me give you a bit more details this time. So I want you to create an input component here. So that input component should only have return a label and an input. Yeah, so it should contain label and input. And I want this input component, input component's value to be stored inside here, inside app.js. So you should have something like input value that is an empty string. So somehow this input component here should update on on change, right? It should update input value inside app.js. So that's what I want you to do. Okay, try to implement it. Oh, one other thing, I saw that several groups tried to actually, instead of creating list item that returns just a list item, you guys did like, you basically exported this whole functionality into a separate list items component, which returned a whole list. Yeah, and you were passing basically to the list items component, you were passing the whole data array. So this approach also works. So when you're thinking of like, do you need to outsource the whole list, or do you just need to outsource one list item? So in that case, you should think of what makes more sense in this case. Yeah, so what is like more functional way, more logical way to do it? So if your app.js is growing like as a very complex component, it makes sense to just outsource the whole unordered list, and to do this mapping and assigning this whole thing, you want to do it in a separate component. It would make sense in this case. Also, when you're passing this whole data array over there, you need to think, so if I'm passing the whole array to a different component, do I even need to store it inside app.js, or should I create a class component, which is a UL, and do I need to store that data array inside that class component? So how do you decide which component should store this data array. So one of the factors is, does this up.js state depend on the data array, or do I have any sibling components that also need to share this state? Yeah, so state in this case is like, let me just draw something. So we have a state here, right? Let's say, oh no, it's not a state, it's parent component. Parent component that has a state. Okay, so that parent component has several child components. So we have a child here, we have a child here, and here. So all of them can share this state. But if I decide that, okay, so this parent component doesn't need the state here, at least this property inside the state. So only this component needs this state, right? So I can, of course, do that. So for example, in this case, I could have data array stored inside unordered list component. Right? I can totally do that, but before doing this, I need to think, do I need to share this data with other siblings? If the answer is no, then you can feel free to move the whole state data inside this unordered list component, which is a class component, which should be the class component in this case. But if other components here, if they also need the same state data, so they also need a state here and in here. So in that case, you don't want to store this array in 3 places. That doesn't make sense, right? So in this case, you will need to take this state and lift it up 1 level to the parent so that all of those siblings can share the same state. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but siblings can't share the same state in between each other?
No, they can't. Because the only way for React to share data is from top to bottom, from parent to child. So that's why it's called unidirectional data flow. So it can only go in one direction, which is from top to bottom. Okay.
Yes.
So this concept of sharing the state between the siblings. So because siblings cannot share any state, so you need to lift the state up to the nearest parent component, okay, to the smallest common parent component. So that's called lifting up the state. So that also can come up in an interview. So they can ask you, for example, something like, if you have several components that are using the same state data, so what do you do with it? So do you store data in every component? And you say no, you just need to lift up the state to the nearest common parent. Yeah, so that nearest common parent would be, whatever. So in this case, it would be up.js. Yeah.
Aselia, what makes the parent? Is it because it's outside of the components folder? If so, then why can't
No.
we just, yeah, because yeah.
So how do you decide which is a parent component? So parent component is a component where you are calling that state, the component. So for example, let me stop drawing. So in this case, what is the parent component of common parent component of input and list item?
Class F.
Because I'm calling them here, right? So they become children of this app component.
But is there any case when the children component can have their own children component?
Of course, yes. So for example, if I had an ordered list component here, and that component would have list items component, so then list items would be grandchildren of this app.js component.
And is there any limitations, or it can like be?
No limitations. They can have as many grandchildren as they like. But that makes React application a bit complex, right? So therefore, several other tools have been developed, such as Redux. So what Redux does, it takes away the state from the components and it stores it here somewhere on the side. And it provides the state to every component, basically individually, whatever piece of state they need. It's like an independent referee, you know. It's not like a parent who is storing all the data. So it's like a third party that is storing all the data, and then each component requests this data from Redux. So
And one more time, is it inside the browser or where that Redux stores?
No, Redux is like a separate tool. Yeah, it's not in the browser. So it's a separate tool that you use together with your React application. But don't worry about it. Redux is a very complex concept and it's a very complex tool. So we're not going there just yet. What you need to remember is that how do you determine nearest common parent? Yeah, it's the nearest component that where you're calling those components, other components. So this will be your nearest common parent. And app.js, in every React application, app.js is the parent component for all the components. So in every React application, it's the same. So you should never rename app.js. And usually like app.js is used mostly for just calling other components and stuff, because imagine this is like a really tiny application and it's already like growing. Yeah. So imagine if you have hundreds of components here. So you're not going to write the logic for every component inside app.js, right? You want to export as much as possible. So inside app.js, you can only just call those components.
And should we call from the children components as well inside the app.js?
No.
We
So
can
it's
call
like
it on the.
Matryoshka.
Okay.
So you call a grandchild inside a child, and then you call child inside a parent. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we actually have 4 minutes left. So I'm gonna leave it as it is for now. And tomorrow during extra class, let's continue working on this application. And we are going to work on inputs tomorrow, okay? Do you guys have any questions?
Thank you, Aselia.
Sure. Do you guys have any questions?
Aselia, I don't have a question related to this, but on React, how do you get pictures from like the folders internally?
Oh, you just create a media folder. So for example, inside SRC, you can create a media folder.
Yeah, because yesterday I drag and dropped my picture and I was trying to reach it from, I put it into the components and I was trying to reach it from app.js. So I couldn't, so I put it into the source, like directly with no folders, and I still couldn't reach to it, you know?
Can you show it?
Yes, but I was watching a movie. You see this? So
Oh,
this.
that's fun.
Oh yeah, this was supposed to be for everybody actually. Happy Halloween.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I don't know where my picture went. I think I deleted, but it was here and I tried to reach it by like dot notation. Like you see the source right here.
Mhm.
Without this long source,
Yeah.
I try to do like here dot slash, you know, picture's name, and it didn't work.
Okay. Can you create inside? Let's inside your SRC folder. Let's create the media folder.
Oh, what is this? Oops. Okay.
And do you want to download something in there? Oh, what's that?
I can just drag and drop this light. Media.
So now, let's say inside app.js, let's show it. Let's show this picture.
Okay. Let me remove this. Oh, this is hell. Okay.
No need to touch that one. So if inside your return statement, if you just create an image image tag.
Here. Oh, okay.
And let's show the path. No, it's not JavaScript. That was just a source,
okay.
right?
So dot src.
No, you are right now. You're in app.js, so you just need to go inside the media folder.
Okay, so it's not even suggesting to, you know.
Yeah.
So inside media
/
light on dot png. You see?
Oh, that's interesting. Let's go back.
Okay.
Asel, what time is your extra class tomorrow?
Oh, that's 1 to 3 p.m. PST.
Okay, thank you.
So if you guys can feel free to go if you need to go. Thank you so much for joining today. We will just fix this with Karina, and I will just hang in there for a couple of minutes.
Aselia, can you send code, please?
Sure, I will.
Thank you.
Let me stop recording.
Thank you, Aselia. Bye.
Thanks so much.